YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and with me here, as always, is my co-host Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org, and we are here. Nebraska finally has a defensive coordinator, Tony White from Syracuse, and we're here to break it down and let you know why you don't need to be freaking out about the 3-3-5 defense. It's going to work out just fine. But yeah, we'll talk about it. But Danny, what was your initial impressions? It's kind of a hire that came out of left field a little bit.
I was gonna say, just like everybody predicted, right? No, but I really, really, really like this hire. People who don't like this hire either don't watch enough college football or don't understand, what he brings to the table. Um, he was a Broyles Award nominee prior to the 2022 season. He was on a list of, I believe it was ESPN's top minority coaching candidate hot board heading into the season. Um, he developed three freshman All Americans during his first time during his first season, at Syracuse. So I really like this hire. I think it's a very forward-thinking hire as the Big Ten gets more pass happy.
Yeah, and I think you know, people are really focused. I knew that when I saw the 3-3-5, they were gonna kind of be upset about that or freak out about that. But you the thing about the 3-3-5 scheme and about football in general is that you're playing teams are playing a lot more in sub package defenses. I mean, you know. Nebraska, even last year. I mean, how often were they, in a 3-4 defense or whatever? I don't even know what their base was last year. I mean, it was so I don't think people need to worry about that much. I mean, if you have five defensive backs, if you're really struggling against the run, you can still have one of those guys, come up in there. But I think the 3-3-5 stack, especially, has found success against running the ball. Syracuse has allowed, like 3.8 this year, 3.5 last year. So it's not like they give up a lot of rushing yards. And I remember one stat, then 1 year when either he was at, I think when he was at San Diego State, that year where they only gave up 78 yards rushing per game. So, I mean, the thing about it is that it's going to confuse quarterbacks. It's going to confuse offensive linemen because basically it's a one gap scheme. So if you guys are familiar with that defensive lineman, there's A gaps and B gaps, and sometimes you have to control two gaps. Sometimes you just are responsible for one, and this is a one gap system. Except guys don't really line up in that gap. They line up more head up. So instead of lining up between the guard and the center, you kind of line up on the center, and then basically the linebacker lines up behind you, and the offensive line kind of has to figure out which gap that you're going to be responsible for. So, I mean, I do think that is going to cause, some issues in terms of, combination blocks and things like that. So if you have really good linebackers, I mean, look, you're going to need big linebackers, guys who could play in a 3-4 scheme, who can take on blocks, who can get off blocks, and you're going to need quality defensive linemen, but that's with any scheme, really. I don't think the scheme matters as much as the players, and this system has worked, and I think that it will work, and it's one of the best things about it is creating turnovers and limiting explosive plays. And honestly, I think those are, and also, sacking the quarterback. And those are basically the three biggest things I think a defense has to do: affect the quarterback, as Matt Rule said, take the football away, and limit those big plays, because it's hard to drive down a field and get points. And so, I mean, if you can, we've seen how many times Nebraska's, played great defense and then boom, gave up a 50-yard touchdown. So if those types of things can be limited, I think this defense will be very successful.
And this team beat Purdue early in the season, and then they beat North Carolina State early in the season, and they only allowed 9 points to North Carolina State. They did allow 29 points to Purdue, but we saw Purdue firsthand. They were a very good offensive team. So, this defense and the scheme within it, I think, bodes very well for, you know, this year, and then, like I said, in coming years, because USC is a particularly dangerous passing team, and like you mentioned, Wisconsin with their new offensive coordinator kind of not sticking to the run as much and being more pass friendly. And then you have Iowa with Cade McNamara now hoping to air it out. So I think this is a good move for not only this year but beyond, because I think we're going to kind of see it transition away from the ground and pound game. I think we're still going to see that because it's the Big Ten, but not as much. And Nebraska needs to be ready for that, and I think they will be with this scheme.
Yeah, and see, I'm not focused on that as much. I don't. I mean, I know there is going to be more passing for sure, but I don't know that the run, the run defense is still always going to be just as important. I mean, whether you're, you know, if you can't, basically, that's if you can't stop the run, you're not going to be able to stop the pass. I mean, I think that we've learned that over the years. It just makes it very easy with play action and different things. And even if you're in a spread system, I mean, Michigan runs a spread. They technically run a spread system. I mean, their quarterback is basically never under center, but they run. That's still a power ass system. They'll go out there and shotgun, but have 7 offensive linemen. So I do think you still have to be able to stop the run, but I don't think this scheme is. I think people are viewing it that way, that it's not like a run defense scheme, and I disagree, because you're going to have those extra safeties in the that fifth defensive back is going to probably be a safety, and those are some run defenders, like Isaac Gifford, somebody like that. Bigger guys. I like them to be linebackers. I've hated the Nebraska linebacker nickel thing. Get some bigger defensive backs who can run, and big safeties. Those guys can cover tight ends in the box, who can help in run defense. So I really don't. As long as your defensive linemen are good and your linebackers are good, I don't think it's going to be a defense that, is more geared towards stopping the pass than stopping the run. I really feel like, as long as Nebraska can get the dudes up front, it's going to be a perfect system for the Big Ten. And really, Michigan does a lot of similar type of things. I mean, they're out there with 3 defensive linemen, and then sometimes they've got 4 linebackers, sometimes they've got 3, sometimes they've got 2. I mean, it really depends, on the opponent that you're playing. And I think you need a scheme that's versatile enough to play, against an I formation attack and then a full, a Purdue attack the next week. That's really what you need in college football. And I think, Tony White's going to be able to bring that to Nebraska. And he's, proven that he can develop talent. And he's also a really great recruiter on top of that.
Yeah, and I think, unlike the previous staff, I trust this one to put good players on the defensive side of the football that will fit this scheme. I think it's an effort that will go hand in hand, and I think that's really important because I don't think in the previous regime that the best athletes were always recruited on the field in terms of the defensive side of the football. So I think it will be a little bit different this year, and I'm excited to see who they can bring in to help with this scheme because I think this staff's evaluation for talent is very good. Now, on that, Bryce Turner, our new commitment from Texas, got a 3-star rating bump up. He was not ranked. As soon as he committed to Nebraska, he got 3 stars. So I'm not going to delve into my ranking conspiracy theory, but in any event, 3 stars is 3 stars, and uh, he's also numerically rated in 88. So I'm happy that he's a 4-star, or not a 4-star, but on the verge of a 4-star as well. So if Nebraska can kind of find those type of athletes and get that speed on the defensive side of the football, then I think the scheme will fit very well, and it just shows the type of talent that this coaching staff wants and their ability to find kind of diamond in the rough players. Because I'm not sure if he got 3 stars because he committed to Nebraska or because they actually took the time to evaluate him. But I think it says something that, you know, uh, Bryce Turner, for example, has a 3-star ranking, and um, you know, he didn't have any on Monday. So, I just think that type of talent evaluation where you can take a diamond in the rough and kind of make him into a solid player will help on the defense as well.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. Pete Thamel reported that yesterday, and everybody basically confirmed it. I'm not sure though if Tony White's coaching in the Syracuse bowl game. I don't know if that would make a lot of sense. Honestly, I'd like to see him come here and get on the recruiting trail right away. But I think that's another aspect that people are really underrating about this hire. People were really wanted Elijah Robinson, and I did too. But that was always going to be a tough pull from Texas A&M with how much money they have. And the thing about White is he coached at UCLA. That's where he kind of had his tie with Matt Rule. He's also coached at San Diego State. He was the Mountain West Recruiter of the Year twice at San Diego State. So, we've been talking about trying to get, this program back into California. Well, Nebraska just did that with Matt Rule. I'm not with Matt Rule hiring Tony White because he's got a lot of ties out there. He's got ties with Texas, and he's obviously been recruiting with Syracuse, in the Northeast. I know that they've got, Syracuse has some talented young players, and it's hard to say if any of them will hit the transfer portal. But generally, when you lose a coordinator, especially one as accomplished as Tony White, I mean, I think that it wouldn't be surprising at all for people to see that happen. And it's interesting that a lot of Nebraska people were freaking out about it or not happy about it, but on the Syracuse side of things, they're devastated about this. And a lot of people there were hoping that he would be like the next head coach. And I know some Syracuse fans aren't always that happy with Dino Babbers or whatever, because his tenure's kind of been up and down. But this defense, I mean, statistically, the last two seasons, I think it's 19th in total defense this year, 29th last year. So it's proven in terms of limiting big plays and confusing the quarterback. I mean, how many times have we talked about that, where you have to be able to confuse the quarterback, pre-snap and mix up coverages and do different things like that. And I think the scheme is going to allow them to do that. And like I said, not just quarterbacks, but it is going to confuse offensive linemen when you're blocking it, because it's going to be different than what they're going to see every single week. So I'm interested to see how it morphs into a Big Ten defense, because I think it is going to be a little different than what we've seen at Syracuse. But I love this hire. I really do. I think that it's I don't know if I want to say home run, but it's definitely a really good move by Matt Rule.
I'm always hesitant to use the phrase home run because I thought Mark Whipple was a home run hire, but and that kind of scarred me a little bit. So I'm not going to say home run, but I really do like the hire. I think the the creativity he can bring on defense is something that is really promising. And like you said, the fact that so many Syracuse fans were saddened by his departure and the fact that he's been one of the hotter names on the coaching board, so to speak. I mean, I think that speaks to the type of, coach he is and uh, what he can do with the talent he gets. And um, like you said, he has had experience on the West Coast, and I think that recruiting experience in particular is going to be important with USC and UCLA again coming in a couple years. I think Nebraska is going to need to have somebody to go to battle, so to speak, on the West Coast, and White can do that. So I'm really excited to see what he brings to the program in many aspects, and I think this is a very good hire.
Yeah, and now it's just it's about getting those players. But I think Ty Robinson, could fit okay, in this scheme, either inside or maybe that's the thing too, is you can have, just because you have a 3-3-5 or whatever. I mean, you can have guys playing on different downs. I mean, people just, there's a lot of versatility to this scheme, and I think it's just kind of that mindset. People were talking about a 4-3 or a 3-4 or whatever, but I, who cares what might have been said to some recruit? I mean, the fact is there's going to be three linebackers playing, and what, I think that was Hayden Moore was talking to, but the linebackers are going to be aggressive. I mean, they're going to be blitzing at times. I mean, they'll be in coverage at times, but I mean, a 4-2-5 is pretty much the base nickel defense that most teams play. I mean, that's it's a little bit different, but even 3-4 teams generally will have two defensive linemen and two edge rushers. Well, that's what this defense is going to be. I mean, you walk up, if you have a really athletic linebacker who can kind of be a pass rusher, and almost somebody like Caleb Tanner. I mean, Caleb Tanner would have been a perfect fit for this system, because he could have been that weak side linebacker, and then kind of walked up and been a rush end. So I mean, that would have been a really great way to have, say, like Mathis and Nelson on the edges, and then you've got Caleb Tanner kind of floating around, and you can rush him up the A gap, you can rush him off the edge, you can just do a lot of different things with them, and then you're sitting there basically with a 4-2-5, which is the same nickel defense that almost every single team in the country runs. So I just think there's a lot of people are just overblowing the 3-3-5 when it comes down to it, and a lot of the sub packages, which is where 80% of college football is played, in your sub package defense. That it makes a ton of sense. And the fact is, if you can't stop the run in your sub package defense, you're gonna struggle in college football nowadays. That's just the bottom line. And I mean, Wisconsin can come out with a spread offense, but I guarantee you they're still going to run the football. You know what I mean? So even like Nebraska's going to do that. I mean, Nebraska's going to come out and they're going to spread people out and they're going to run the ball right down their throat. And the spread is simply a way to, at times get guys out of the box because you have to cover those receivers. And so I think a 3-3-5, just helps because it gives you a lot of, versatility. And I think they can be very creative in how, they're game planning for each offense every week, which is what you need.
Dylan Rogers, one of the 2023 commits in the class, comes to mind when I look at this defense. He's very versatile, very aggressive. He has good coverage skills, good vision, and so a guy like him, I think, would fit well in this defense. We'll probably talk a little bit more about him later, but I think with this defense, I certainly see our defensive recruits, fitting in the ones that we have right now. And I'm not just blowing smoke up everybody's ass. I truly believe that. So, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. And I am very excited. And, part of me really likes that it's not somebody we expected because sometimes the big names, they just don't pan out. Sometimes the sexy names, would I have, would I have loved to have the Georgia co-defensive coordinator? I would have, but at the same time, I think White brings a lot to the table, and I'm curious to see how he implements his defense because I do think he is a very smart football mind.
Yeah, and one thing you have to like with Schumann, I mean, he's never called plays, so that was always going to be a little bit of a risk, I mean, yeah, he has been known as a guru and coach with a lot of great people, but it's still different. You actually calling the plays, and so Tony White has done that. He's been he was the defensive passing game coordinator at Arizona State before he came here. And the 2 years prior to when he was there, they gave up 34 plays of 40 yards or more, and in the 2 seasons he was there, they only gave up 13. I mean, that's a massive difference because I mean, if you're giving up 34 plays of 40 yards or more over 2 seasons, I mean, that's like almost one and a half 40-yard plays a game. You're not going to win football games if you're giving up almost two explosive plays like that, 40-yarders per game. So, I mean, just to turn that around. And I think, with Syracuse too, I mean, he turned it around basically, right away the first year he got it. It wasn't, and Syracuse isn't a team that's known for having, big time talent in the ACC or anything. And it's been a top 30 defense each of the last 2 years. They take the football away, they sack the quarterback. So, I mean, I think those are the biggest things. I mean, the yardage and stuff is nice, but like I said, you've got to limit explosive plays, affect the quarterback, which Matt Rule said, that's been a key focus point, and you have to take the football away. And Nebraska under Eric Shenander was horrible at that. They were absolutely terrible at that. And as good as Bill Bush did, they didn't take the ball away very much under him either. I mean, you've got to be taking the ball away if you're a good defense, 1.5 times a game at least. And so that's what I'm looking for. And he had a 1 year at Syracuse where they were like at 2.1 takeaways per
Yep.
game. So, if you can replicate some of those things, I think this is going to be a great move.
What were they good at under Eric Shenander?
Yeah,
I
nothing.
was just thinking about that. Yeah, nothing at all in my opinion. But and
I mean,
honest,
they had different, like 1 year they would be okay at the pass rush, and and then 1 year they would have some takeaways, but it just never, there was never any consistency. There was never anything you could hang your hat on. It's like this is what we're going to do well.
I think JoJo Doman last year, meaning 2021, covered up a lot of the defensive mistakes, more than I realized. Honestly, I miss him. But anyway, and take this for what you will. But the fact, if you can do well on the field at a basketball school, that means something to me too. I mean, you
Hmm.
look at, for example, Lance Leopold, he started off really hot, and Kansas isn't a football school. Now they may be, starting to trend towards not being a football school, but having a better program. And Syracuse, that isn't exactly a football school, but look what they're able to do this year. So there's no really metric to define success, but I really like the fact that he and the program did well at a basketball school.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking, the thing about it is, we talked about Schumann, and then we were talking about Mike Saravo, from Carolina. And Well, I do think that he could have done a decent job. I mean, that would have not, I think that would have hit like a dud within the fan base, but that was kind of the expectation, in another NFL guy. Maybe he could still come and be a linebackers coach. We haven't really said. I know that White, last year, or his last 2 years at Syracuse, he was the defensive coordinator and he coached linebackers. So, there was that other linebackers coach, Devora. I can't remember his last name. I'll probably misspell it, but it was interesting because he did coach some outside guys. So, I think that would give Nebraska, kind of an inside linebacker and an outside linebacker coach. But neither of those moves have been announced either. That's just, recruits have said that. So, I mean, it could be he could be just an analyst. He could be an off-field analyst for all we know. So I'll be interested to see when they make these announcements. And also on the coaching front, I mean, still sounds like Jake Peets is coming. I mean, I know the Rams won last night, so maybe he's not such a bad offensive coordinator, offensive assistant, But so we'll see if that finishes out there, and then we're basically down to, if he is going to be the quarterbacks coach, we're down to just a wide receivers coach at this point, and a linebackers. Now that we got you back here, yeah, I'm looking at grades for Tony White, and I think with everything that he brings, I'm gonna say that this hire is an A. I think he brings experience as a defensive coordinator. He's had success in multiple leagues, the Mountain West, Pac-12, ACC. So he brings that versatility. He's got guys to the NFL. He's proven, and he's a great recruiter. So my grade, for Tony White is going to be an A.
I'll say B plus because I just want to see how his scheme fits before I give him an A. But I really do like this hire. He's a good recruiter. He has experience out west, and Matt Rule talked about wanting youthful energy on the coaching staff, and I think he definitely brings that. So I'm excited, and I noticed some of the Syracuse players were following him on Twitter, and different players are following him on Twitter. So what that means for Nebraska, I don't know, but that's never a bad thing these days.
Nope, it's not a bad thing at all. And I mean, an A from me, a B plus from you. That's probably better grades than most Nebraska fans. But I think once you get to know this guy and see him in action, I think he's going to be a great hire. And I believe, like you said, I trust Matt Rule, so I'm confident in these moves. And get into the comment section, folks. Let us know what you think. Give us your grades and explain it why, and we'll have some debate. Tell us why maybe you don't like Tony White, or why you do, or vent your frustrations on the 3-3-5. We'll try to get you off the ledge a little bit here. So make sure you guys like the videos, get into the comment section, let us know your grades for Tony White, and make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our content. We're going to have another video posted up this afternoon too that's going to break down a huge recruiting weekend for the Huskers and what all that means, especially in the wake of hiring Tony White. So make sure you check out that as well, and check out huskerbigred.com and also thegreatcornholio.org for more information on the Huskers if you're needing some outlet when we're not doing our videos. So thanks again for hanging out with us, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.